Hello folks, it is time for some more hobby nightmares. If you like what I do on the channel, then make sure you support us by liking the video. It really does help with the YouTube gods and pushing us out there to more people who can perhaps get something that they need from listening to hobby nightmares. So, let's jump straight into what we're doing today, and that is starting with Kyle. Hello North, my name is Kyle. A long-time listener, but a first-time Hobby Nightmare submitter. I got into the hobby during 5th edition. I was in my friendly local game store in college in between games of Legend of the Five Rings when I saw a Tau Crisis Battlesuit box hanging from the wall. I picked it up to examine it more closely. That's when one of my friends walked over and explained what I was holding in my hands and the hobby that lay beyond. Ah, the fated moment. It took me another year of researching the lore and the hobby in general before I finally dove in with another friend of mine, the catalyst being a Games Workshop being within walking distance of the sub-shop where we worked. I went for Tau, obviously, the image of the Ochre battlesuit artwork never leaving my mind, and my friend went to Tyranids. We were poor, just making above minimum wage, our patience running out before we could buy more models to actually play a game. We played with Red Bull cans, rolls of packing tape, and bottle caps, while getting blasted on homemade whiskey sours. It was a blast. There's nothing wrong with doing that, you know, man. If you don't have the models and you want to just practice. I used to do it like tokens and stuff. It's fine, it works. It wasn't until years later that I realised I had actually played Warhammer over a decade earlier, uncovering my repressed hobby nightmare. I do apologise in advance. Most of the details that I can share about this nightmare is from looking back in retrospect. When I was about 10 or 11, my family went to a new mall that opened in the area. My family wanted to go into a clothes shop that they had found, of which I had zero interest. However, there was a shop next to it with a large, bright yellow lettering in front of it called Games Workshop. I asked my parents if I could go in, and I would wait for them there. With their permission, I went inside and saw walls filled to the ceiling with boxes of different models and artwork. On one of the walls was a large poster of the 3rd edition artwork of the Black Templars army box. In the centre of the store was a table with fake grass, moulded hills, and miniature trees that stood out like a green beacon in the dimly lit store. This is where I saw them. These creatures that reminded me of the xenomorphs from Aliens, facing off against what I could gather at the time were blue dudes. When I leaned down to get my face closer to the models, I heard a voice say, do you want to play? I looked up at this man. I don't remember too much of what he looked like, just that he was very tall. But then again, when you are 10, all adults are giants to you. I assumed this man was in his early 20s or something. I was confused. I'd only seen things like this behind cases of glass, meant for admiring with your eyes only. Play? I responded. What do you mean, play? Well, this is a game, he chuckled. Now which side do you want to play as? He gestured to what I know now as Tyranids and Ultramarines. Me being the monster and alien lover that I was, and still am, I chose the Tyranids. He set up the board with the opposing armies on opposite sides of the open field. From what I can recall, I had a couple of Tyranid warriors, a unit of Hormagaunts, as well as a few units of Termagants. I'm less sure as to what he had, but I believe it was 2 tactical squads. Here, you can have the first turn, he said. Okay, what do I do? Well, first, you need to get closer to me, he said as he started moving my Tyranids towards the Space Marines. Okay, now what? Now you can shoot with these guys, he said, pointing to the Termagants. It quickly became clear that I was not actually playing the game, as he picked up some dice and started rolling. Oh, sorry man, looks like you didn't do anything to the Space Marines. Okay, before I go any further, if any of you are starting a career at Games Workshop, or thinking of doing that, never, ever run an intro game like this. Don't you ever do that. It's not about you, and you're not playing the game. Alright? What this guy is doing, he thinks he's doing the right thing by just playing the game and showing somebody how the rules work by just playing the game in front of them against himself. That's not what an intro game is. An intro game is you essentially taking the starting movie from the Dawn of War games and playing it out on the tabletop with a new hobbyist. That's what you're doing. Okay? If you need to fudge roles or rules to make it more exciting, that's what you do. You're not teaching them the ins and outs of the intricacies of playing 40k in an intro game. You're letting them get used to the feel of what it's like to play 40k. That's what you're doing. I often thought when I was giving intro games that I was doing my customer a disservice by not teaching them the rules that are verbatim in the army book, but let's be honest, the rules are very dense at times and can be very poorly written. You've got to admit that to yourself, even as a Games Workshop staffer, right? So what I then tried to do, I was getting very little success, so what I then tried to do was fudge it. I made up rules on the spot. I came up with different roles that people could do to make things more interesting, and I made people have fun. I told a story with them on the tabletop about what is happening between our forces that are right with us at that stage. That hooks them in. They can learn the rules when they buy the rules, you know, and I will be there to help them with that. But an intro game is about getting people enthused into the hobby and what it feels like to play 40k and play it well. Literally playing the game out in front of them and sticking to the rules verbatim is not how you run an intro game. Categorically, it's not how you run an intro game. So don't ever do this. Why not? I was puzzled and worried that I did something wrong, even though I technically never did anything to begin with, because I was just standing there. Well, my guys have armor as tough as tanks, so your shooting just plinked off of their armor. Oh. I felt downtrodden. Okay, my turn. He moved the Space Marines closer, and then out it came. A piece of translucent green plastic that he had hovering over my bugs like the Angel of Death itself. What's that? I asked. This is called a flame template, he smiled. He rolled a handful of dice, moved the template again, and rolled some more dice. I have 2 flamers, he said without even looking down at me to count the casualties that he had inflicted on me. By the end of his shooting phase, I had 1 gaunt and 2 warriors remaining. His forces are still completely fresh. Wait, how did you kill so many of my guys? I asked. Don't I have armor too? You do, but it's not as strong as mine. It's the same stuff that fingernails are made of. It was at this point that my parents had walked into the store. They came up and asked if I was ready to go. Completely defeated and put off this game entirely, I was ready to move on with my prepubescent life and said that I was ready to go. As I turned to walk out with my parents, I heard the man say, "So did you have fun? Do you want any models? I've got some boxes right here." He was holding a box of Tyranid warriors, shaking it as if he were trying to entice a dog with treats. No thanks, I said. That wasn't fun at all. I wouldn't step into another Games Workshop for over a decade after that day. Good. I'm glad you said some kids do not have a filter, and that is good. That is good. That's great. Yeah, no thanks, I didn't have fun. That's brilliant. What really good comeback. Not that he was like trying to put you down. This is just a guy who's a nerd and just, you know, doesn't get humans. Right? He thinks this should have worked. He'll be confused of why this didn't work. Do you know what I mean? Looking back on it, the nightmare wasn't that bad of an experience. The thing that really sticks out to me, though, is this guy wanting to beat on my 10-year-old self delayed me into getting into the hobby that I now hold so near and dear to my heart. That's it for me, North. I hope you all enjoyed the nightmare. Keep up the great work. Well, I'm sorry he put you off, dude, but that's, it's not great, is it? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can do irreparable damage as a Games Workshop staffer or manager, right? You hold a vast amount of responsibility. Anyway, the Turk is back, and he says, "Hi lad, what's going on? It's the Turk again. I wrote to you the other day about my kill team game where I had created my Beastmen kill team as a bunch of office workers. This story, though, is probably a bit more serious, shall we say. I've worked in a prison in the northwest of England for a number of years, and in that time, I've met all sorts of people from the absolute dregs of humanity to actually quite decent lads who've made some mistakes and are paying the price now for their bad decisions in life. Anyway, unfortunately, this story isn't about the decent lads, this story is about the dregs of humanity. I was at my friendly local game store talking to my mate whilst having a game, and I just happened to look around. It's a habit I've developed in my profession, and I'm always on alert. I've been assaulted enough times at work to be like a meerkat at all times now. 4 times, including spending a week in hospital after a particularly bad one. Anyway, as I'm looking around, I saw a face I recognised. He had a very distinctive look, and I knew instantly where I knew him from. He was one of the service users, quote unquote, from work, but, worse than that, he was there for a very specific type of crime. I won't use the actual words, but I'll use a fairly simple set of initials. CP and CSA. Oh no. Oh no. I have to say, Turk, I applaud the calmness of guys like you, because I would not be able to keep my cool in this situation if he's there. I'd be drop kicking him in the gut if he's around kids at the store. Do you know what I mean? I stood staring across at him, my blood slowly boiling until he saw me making eye contact. His chin dropped when he saw me looking directly at him. I got the attention of a staff member and told him where I recognised this individual from, and gave him a brief rundown of what this creature had done to end up where he had been. Turns out, he'd been to the store several times, never actually bought anything, but kind of floated around the place making conversation with younger people there. I saw the staff member speaking to their manager, and honestly, I could see the colour drain from the manager's face. Well, as much as it could from... Oh, I'm not going to say that. That's kind of... It's kind of racist what you just said there, man. I'm not going to say it. Okay. I made my way out to the exit and waited outside for the creature. My patience was rewarded after about 5 minutes with him, under the grip of the manager, being cast out, and words to the effect of him being banned for life. A fantastic slew of expletives highlighting the manager's point. After the manager and his staff returned inside the store, I spoke to the creature myself. Generally, I avoid violence wherever possible, but will get involved when necessary, and on very rare occasions, violence is the correct answer. Anyway, turns out he was on probation, and somebody, some paragon of humanity, had informed his probation officer about his activities, and he was recalled to prison to serve out the remainder of his sentence after having what looked like a very nasty fall. Anyway, take it easy, lad. Hope you have a belter. The Turk. But I'm glad it ended that way, dude, because some of these people never learn. They never learn. You know? There is no excuse. There is no excuse. Literally none. It's disgusting, man. I don't understand, you know. I think we live in a world now where, you know, you can... Young lads can get done for really silly things. Like I once had to deal with a lad in one of the high schools that I worked at, who was like, he was going into university. He was 18 and he thought his girlfriend was older than she was. She lied to him, and it turns out he was with somebody who was underage, and the police got involved, and it wasn't his fault. Literally was not his fault. You know what I mean? Like it's because, you know, what are you gonna do? You're 18. You're gonna ask a girl for an ID if she looks old enough. Do you know what I mean? Eventually we got them to back off, but it was a stressful time, and it got out, and like he was called all sorts of names. So, and he had to move. Like he moved way away, you know. And I really hope he didn't follow him to university. That's all I'm gonna say. So we are living in a world where bullshit like that tends to happen because we have an overreaction. But you didn't have an overreaction here. You had the right reaction, and that was to get this guy as far away from Games Workshop and whatever local game store you're in as humanly possible. GW have one thing I will give them credit for. They have an amazing team to deal with things like this. They're very good at dealing with this kind of thing. There is something in place. All you need to do is ask your trainer about what the protocol is, he will put it in black and white for you. Several bullet points. Here's what you do and when. Here's who you call and when. Right? That's what you do. You get them away from your place of business as humanly possible. You take their name, you take whatever you can from them, you then call the police, you then call us. That's what you do. You know? It's very, very, very simple. Because you never know. The guy might, again, like this guy, he might be on probation. And we need to get him away from the public because he's ready to commit another offence, right? So, Games Workshop managers in general are fucking heroes when it comes to stuff like this. I'm not kidding. My manager was the worst manager you could ever work for. He was an arsehole. But when this happened in his store, he sorted it out like straight away. And I mean bravely sorted it out. He kept the guy locked in to the back room until the police got there. Right? Because it turned out that this guy had been, doing inappropriate things with one of the lads there who was like crying and shaking and didn't know what to do. Do you know what I mean? And, as soon as my manager confronted him, the guy just like accepted it really calmly, like, oh, okay. Like he was relieved to be caught. You know what I mean? But he was great. Like, my manager was absolutely amazing. Still, to this day, I'll never get on with him as an employee, right? Or even as a person, because generally he did quite annoy me. He's an annoying bloke. But that kind of thing, I was absolutely respectful of. I think he did an amazing job there. And for a bad manager like that to do that, imagine what a good manager does, who's really well trained and knows exactly what to do. Brilliant stuff. Anyway, ironically, just as a finishing point there, I'd be okay leaving my kid in a Games Workshop. I've said this before. Number one, the hobby's full of amazing people who will look after them. And number two, if there is somebody nefarious there, on the very slim chance that there is somebody there with nefarious intentions, Games Workshop managers are trained and know exactly the signs to look for and know how to safeguard the people who are in there. Which is why we get used as a fucking free creche and child-minding service by most parents. Go figure. Black Sight says, "Hi North, I hope this email finds you well. I stumbled across your channel a while back and enjoy listening to it every so often whilst I'm painting, as I get a good chuckle here and there instead of listening to the same song on Spotify over and over. Anyways, I would like to share a story that happened some time ago but has been eating away at me since it happened. Almost a hobby nightmare, and I'm in an a-hole situation." Okay. To give some background, I used to help out a lot at a local shop that no longer exists, running events such as narratives and tournaments. I made quite a few friends here and there, and life was good. One of these friends, we'll call him Isaac, is the one who really got me into 3D printing. We talked a lot, and were very close. I even traded a heavily converted Dark Elder army for his first 3D printer, as he worked for a 3D printing company and had several personal printers he no longer used that were of really good quality. As time progressed, he would sometimes miss a weekend here and there, sometimes even back to back, which was not like him. The most we would ever find out was that it was due to some health issues. Fast forward to mid-pandemic. I was laid off right at the height of the pandemic due to an all-time low in production, and was fortunate enough to find a new job pretty quickly. While going through training, the hobby Discord with our friend group starts going off, and I figured it was just the dweebs posting memes and shit talking as they normally do. I would find out during my break that this was not the case. I came to find out that Isaac had passed away due to complications with a rare form of cancer he had been keeping secret from everybody but his family. I was so taken back by this, I had to leave for the day and wasn't able to return to work. As I was a new hire and unable to mentally work, I lost my job. I just didn't care though. I did find a new job, don't worry. During this time, I was on and off unemployment benefits, so was stable for now. Come time for the funeral. I got to see some friends I haven't seen in a long time, and it was good to be together again, but I hated the fact it took the death of a friend to bring us all together. I was never a very social person, so I stayed with a few of my closer hobby friends whilst others from the group mingled. A few days later, I got a message from the ringleader that I am to pick up some of Isaac's stuff his parents were giving away from his lackey. We'll find the ringleader Michael and his lackey Jensen. Okay. So one of Isaac's friends is giving away his stuff. Because he's called Jensen, I'm assuming he's not a very nice person. I was surprised, as I didn't even know this was happening. A bit of background on these two. Michael is the kind of guy who likes to have a good time playing games, but was a raging alcoholic and would be very judgmental of whoever came into his shop. He was the gatekeeper and our shop suffered for it, but as a group we had 15 to 20 players, as is in a very small space. Jensen was the stereotypical orc player who made conversation even orc players wouldn't want to field. Like he took a ball rolled in superglue and tossed it into a bits box to see what stuck. He would also jokingly take dice which he were rolling very poorly with during a game, pop it in his mouth and walk away. Ew. No. Dice are disgusting things. They've been in people's hands and on tables and you know? There's a good reason if I have lunch at an event, I will go and solidly wash my hands after every game of 40k, man. Just in case I'm going to eat something. You know? Anyway. I was to pick up some tau that were Isaac's, and I left the tau guy... I was to pick up some tau that were Isaac's, as I was the tau guy at our club. I didn't even know Isaac played tau. It was a good amount of stuff, and maybe just around 1,000 points worth of models. I was specifically told that they were giving me this as they trusted I would never get rid of it. Though a little hurt, I was not... Though I was a little hurt I was not talked to about the dividing of Isaac's stuff, as I was a close friend and would have liked to go through everything with Michael and Jensen. When this happens, I took it and said that I wouldn't say anything. Perhaps I felt a bit entitled to the... Dude, the way this is written, you're using very strange words in the middle of your sentences. Perhaps I felt a bit entitled to the Dark Eldar I traded for a 3D printer, which me and Isaac shared such a bond over during our time at the shop. I found out this was given to an individual who treated him like shit constantly. My blood was boiling, but I suffered in silence as I didn't want to start a fight and seem ungrateful for the tau I was picking up from Jensen. After this, I went radio silent for some time whilst I dealt with the grief and just worked on the tau I was given. The tau was a mismatch of broken battlesuits, missing almost all of their guns, and just in general, pretty incomplete kits. I worked hard 3D printing and converting this armour using custom bits Isaac had purchased to make this as close to what I imagined he was going for. As time went on, I shelved the project as I had no clue how he wanted to paint them and couldn't bring myself to paint them in my theme, let alone, and just couldn't find the motivation for it. On the other hand, I was selling off large portions of my personal collection to make ends meet. To put it in perspective, by this point, I have sold all my Eldar, around 10,000 points, and most of my Tau of around 6,000 points. All I had left was a 3D printer, 3,000 points of my personal Tau, and Isaac's 1,000 points of Tau. I then did what I still regret to this day, and posted what I had left to sell, including Isaac's stuff. During this time, my ex helped convince me to sell Isaac's stuff too, as she was not the kind of person who would rather see me without a home and would help if he could. Okay. What good is having a Warhammer army if I'm living out of the back of a car? So I sold it. Well, to be fair, he's right. Sorry, but he is. Life comes first, man. This is a hobby. Life comes first. You know? A few weeks later, Jensen messages me out of the blue. He was asking if he could come over and go through what I had of Isaac's stuff so we could use it for a game. Initially, I was just going to say no and hide the fact that I'd sold them. But as I wanted to be honest, I told him I sold them to make ends meet. An exchange of words between us both via text happened, and I regret a few things that I said. I tried to explain my situation, but Jensen would keep saying that you knew the agreement and what you did was wrong. I don't know, man. I don't know. If it's saved, I'm sure that Isaac would have been happy with you selling them if it meant you were surviving. Do you know what I mean? The following day, I contacted the ringleader Michael to see if word had gotten to him, as I thought he was my friend and that he would listen to me and be more neutral. I was wrong. It turns out Michael and Jensen were hanging out during that time, and he was reading everything that was being said, saying why I am. Okay, say you need to use quote marks when you're talking about what somebody said, because it forms a part of the sentence. Saying, why am I making it seem like it's Jensen's fault when the fault was all mine? I at no point said it was his fault, and was being honest about what had happened to Isaac's stuff and my current situation. I made sure it went to somebody who would give his models the attention they deserve, but Michael was having none of it. Eventually, the heated argument ended with me telling Michael off. As I said, it's good to see that they see me as nothing more than a 3D print monkey for them to use whenever they want. I have not spoken to any of them from that group since then. My friends, quote-unquote, that I have known for years, showed me their true alliances, where they stood, and I was destroyed. Almost done with Warhammer altogether. I have since then moved on years later. I have a stable job and a new apartment, and I've even found a new home store with a much more inviting community where I now run narrative events. Even if this does not end up in hobby nightmares, it feels good to get the weight off my chest after so many years. I still play the Weeaboo Space Communists and enjoy every single minute of it, and still to this day thank Isaac for getting me into 3D printing, as I like to think every time I print something new for my army of Tau, there's a bit of Isaac in each one of them. Thank you for reading if you made it to the end north, though perhaps deeper than most hobby nightmares. I hope that if somebody out there is listening to this now is going through or has gone through something similar and gets a bit of comfort from this in some way, knowing they're not the only one and let life goes on. Now if you excuse me, I'm going to go paint some Tau. Cheers. Well, again, you were right to sell them, man. At the end of the day, I know you agreed not to, but at the end of the day, if you're losing your place to live, there are more important things in life than the hobby. The hobby is a hobby, but your life and your house is your life and your house. Do you know what I'm saying? Please make sure that you live your life and you're not on the street. That's the most important thing. Okay? You didn't do anything wrong here. Just don't worry too much about it. Being serious. I'm glad that you moved on with your life. I'm glad everything's fine now. But again, don't be too hard on yourself. Okay? It had to happen. Maybe the one thing you could have done was spoken to the guys first and said, listen, just so you know, I am up shit's creek without a paddle financially. I need to make money. I'm going to sell all my Warhammer. Right? Just so they know what's going on. You haven't tried to hide it, you know? Maybe that's what they thought you did. But even if that's what they thought you did, they still act like petulant children and assholes about it and like ostracize you from a group. That's some childish shit that people should never do. Right? You know what I mean? Especially not over a situation like this. Anyway, I'll speak to you tomorrow, guys, for some more Hobby Nightmares. I love you all a long time and have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.